Welcome to Chapter 9 in our Hidden Art of Homemaking series. Alright guys, welcome back. I'm Laura Wilkie with Down Home with Lemon Pie. I'm a Christian stay-at-home homeschool mama of 7, and we are gearing up right now. This is our 8th video in this video series, The Hidden Art of Homemaking by Edith Schaefer. This is chapter 9 that we're going to be diving into, and it has been a fun journey. I hope you guys are having a lot of fun and getting so much out of this. I do want to point out, like I do in every video, that I cannot possibly point and get to everything that is covered in this beautiful book. So I do encourage you to pick up your own copy. It is totally worth it, and honestly, it's just worth it to have to reference. And like I said, it's my highlighter book, so it's just a good one to have on hand for that. You know, and I had a comment actually last week, and I really agree with it, that a mom was saying this would be a good book for teens to read, girls to read as like a homemaking study. And I totally agree with that. I think that would be a great addition to any homeschool. So the next chapter is chapter 9. It is writing and prose and poetry. And I was kind of not sure where we were going to go with this because I don't know. And this is a fairly short chapter, so this video may not be as long as the others, but yeah, I wasn't sure where we were going with this because I don't know. I don't write a lot of things when I think about writing in the probably traditional sense, and like I don't write books or things like that. But there are things that she points out here where it is good and it is useful and it is beautiful and it is clever to hone that skill as well. And so I do want to kind of touch on those as well for you guys. She says, if writing is your buried art form, disinter it and develop it. Hidden art in the area of writing can be developed in a practical way for the fulfillment of the writer and for the enjoyment and enrichment of the lives of family, friends, and casual contacts. Writing doesn't need to be for an audience of more than one. If it's just for you and your spouse or you and your child, that is totally worth it. Writing is certainly a medium for communication, as all art forms. But then she talks about how sometimes things are easily said via the written word. She talks about in the positive sense, but often we see it in the negative sense. Like with social media, people are more bold with what they write, right? But flipping that to the positive side, if there is maybe a sensitive topic or a sensitive subject, you can totally feel more at ease if you have time to compose yourself and organize your thoughts into a written form where you can re-look over it and all of that. And she says, if you feel you have an unrecognized talent for writing, or if you simply love to write and want to do it, my advice is just to do it, just to write. She says, but I thought this was really good. This is a really good key because I feel like this holds us back so many times. And it says, but write without ambitious pride, which makes you feel as if it is a waste to write something that will never be published. I love that so much, and I'll tell you why in a few minutes, but I really do love that. And there's so many things that we can write just for enjoyment, and there's even things that have been written for enjoyment that later became published. We'll touch on that in a minute. And that was something that was beautiful, but that wasn't its intended purpose, was not to be written to be published. And I think that's just awesome. She says letters could well come first of all. She says we all know someone who's waiting for a letter or wants to be, you know, thought of. And this is kind of like, a lost art in our society because we're so technologically focused. And there's phones. If we want to talk to someone, we just call them, even if they're far away. We can text them, we can post on social media, and they may see it there if it's like you're trying to keep in contact with people. But to actually sit down and write a letter, to take the time to mail it and send it, there's something to be said for that. And I am, you know, when I started this YouTube channel, I wanted it to be very true. I didn't want it to be fake. And I feel like we have enough of that in our society. We have enough of mamas who do up these Pinterest perfect pictures and ideas and visuals and all this on social media, and we need something that is just true and real, and that is what I wanted this to be. So in keeping with that, letter writing, I am terrible at. There's actually several things in this chapter that I'm terrible at, so this is probably a good one for me. Okay, so getting back real quick to things that were written for enjoyment versus for publication. Thinking about Beatrix Potter, I absolutely love Beatrix Potter. It's actually, Beatrix is the middle name of my youngest daughter, and that's how much we love it. And so anyway, those pieces, those stories that she wrote were actually originally letters. And from my understanding, they were letters, and she wrote them to children she knew because she didn't have any children. And they later became published stories as we know them today. And I think about that. There's so many things that we do that would work for that. Like, okay, for example, one of my kids' grandparents is awesome at telling these stories. They're the same bedtime stories that she made up and told my husband when he was a kid. And she tells them to my kiddos, and I tell her all the time, you got to write these down, and they could probably even be a book series, but really I want them written down so that we can pass them on to their children. But she's, you know, she hasn't gotten to that, but it's okay. But it's little things like that. And I have things too. Like there's so many things that I feel like I could share with my kids, but they're not at the age that I could share them. But things that I've learned in parenting, things that I've learned as a homemaker, things that I've learned just in life. So off and on, and this is where I was talking about, this kind of gets to my personal heart, is because off and on throughout my journey or throughout my life, I have taken times and moments where I have written things down, like in a journal, but I am terrible about being consistent with it. And that is something that I really want to work on, because I would love for my kids to have a record. How awesome would that have been if we had records of our parents going through parenting when they were our age? And you know, you see them as you remember, but what about all the things you don't remember? I think it would just be cool to have like a little peek inside of their lives. So she does actually go right into this as talking about writing to your parents. If you're privileged to still have them with you, you could write to them, especially if they're far away. Mine are far away, and like I said, I am not good at this. And it's just, you get so caught up. It's true. Like you get so caught up in all of the things that are going on in the day-to-day, and writing just, it doesn't come into my focus very often. And so it's something that I really want to try to refocus and try to bring back. She says, if you're a parent with children away from you for some reason or another, you can write to them. Home is made up of communication and growing relationships. Okay. There are many shattered parents who have followed this pattern and seem bewildered. She's talking about when we do all these things, like we have all the time in the world to do all of these things for our kiddos each day, like to make their meals and do their laundry and all these things. And then when they're grown and they move out, she's talking about it seems like we don't have time for those things when you could replace those things with just a simple communication like writing or whatever. And I think she makes a very good point, and I am very guilty of this, very guilty. And I feel like she makes a good point though. Contact and communication with one's family should never be lost because of necessary separation. Okay, the next part I really like because it's kind of what I was talking about a few minutes ago. This is kind of jumping around a little bit, but where she was talking about, where I was telling you that I just write little things that have happened. I try to get better at this, and then I'll find that I'll go many months without doing it, sometimes even years. And you know, but I try to get back to that. And I feel like often we're like, oh, we haven't done that, it didn't work, so we'll stop completely. And that is where we fail. So we don't need to do that. But we do need to get back into that. I had a friend, great friend, years ago, and she just gave me advice. She said, you know what, if you don't want to do like a journal, you could just write down a couple of things about your day each day. And I thought that's an easy way to do it, like a bullet point. And she said, she does this. She said she writes down 3 things from the day. One of them has to be something good about her husband. One of them has to be something good about her child or children. And then the next thing is anything. So I thought that was kind of a good and a little good guideline, I guess. I really like the way she does that, and it does encourage us to focus on the good. So I did like that as well. Another tip that she gives here, and I really like this one too. If you are far away from family members and maybe you're sending a care package. I know we have family members that do this often and we absolutely love it. And she says, if you're sending a care package, why not include a letter, something they could keep that would tell about the items inside the care package. Maybe it's some of your favorite things, or maybe it's how you acquired them, or about your shopping experience looking for them. Just a little thing that might make it just a little bit more personal, I think. I like that idea a lot. This is something that I really wish I had. So the next thing is write of spiritual things, establishing a relationship which can continue in conversation when the homecoming takes place. I actually like the spiritual things part so much because I was not raised as a Christian. I came to Christianity as an adult, in fact, after we had our 3rd child. And I do know that people in my family were Christians, but that desire to share that faith with others, including myself, was not there. And so that was not shared with us. But I do think, like, I wish that I had some spiritual wisdom or information or something from like my grandparents or my aunts and uncles, or you know, my great grandparents about their faith and how that looked in their life. Were they having to trust God as we do day to day in our lives, or was it more simple? Or even how they came to faith, like their testimony. I feel like these things are sacred. They really are. And there are things that we can pass on to our children, and they can keep, and they can just read. I read so many stories about people, their faith or their Christian walk, and I just think, wow, I don't know these people. How cool would it be if I had these same kind of stories, but of my family members? And so I really want to focus on that, I think, for myself. She says, okay, so this is something you need to remember. Writers of letters make mistakes, and each letter is not going to accomplish its purpose any more than each meal is going to be the perfect meal, or each painting the perfect painting. But each conversation is imperfect too. Sometimes we end a conversation feeling there's been no communication, and we might have to we might as well have spent the evening sleeping. So basically what she's saying here is we don't need to say, oh, we're not going to write because it wasn't perfect, or I didn't spell the words right, or the grammar's not quite right, or the paper's not right, or the ink is the wrong color, or I only have a pencil. I think that we're really good at coming up with excuses on why we shouldn't do something versus actually doing it. And so I think that's where she's getting at here. And I think that if we just jump in and do it, it will be better. And you could even see that evolve over time. So she says, whether or not writing is your hidden art form or not, writing is still communication, and communication is necessary for relationships between parents and children and spouses. So it's really doesn't need to be as hard as we can very easily make it out to be. Some simple ideas, very simple ideas. She gives us several here, talking about the classic, putting notes in a lunch, either for your kids or your husband. I usually see these as love notes, but I really like that she includes a witty note, a clever poem, a serious thought, a reminder that you're thinking of them. I can imagine, my husband's kind of a funny guy. He likes jokes and things, and he would probably find it really funny if I just included like something funny, something that made him laugh. Especially because he's always telling me I don't have a sense of humor, so that would be really cute. But there's other things too. She talks about things that may come into your mind while you're doing different things, little puns or little jokes or whatever. Maybe there was a funny experience with a particular food and you happen to be packing that food in your husband's lunch, and you just kind of write a little reminder of that, you know, remember when you did this or whatever, or I did this or whatever. I think it would just be sweet. I think it also is very good because it reconnects us throughout the day when we can't be physically connected. And so I do like that. Let's see. This one is something that one of my daughters is very good at. She does this often, and she has done this for years. And it is, she will write us if she thinks that she has upset us or has offended us, not just mom and dad, but sometimes her siblings. She will go and write us beautiful little notes that say I'm sorry, and we'll leave them on our pillows or our dresser or under our pillow. And she talks about that here. And I think that sometimes I'm sorry is hard to say, and sometimes I was wrong is hard to say. And I have kept a lot of these notes that say things like, I'm sorry I had a bad attitude. I think I was just hungry and mad, or maybe I was tired. And it's a little thing, but it means so much to myself and my husband, because we look back and we think, wow, something we're doing is working. And I know it's little, and maybe that's prideful to say, I don't know, but it is reassuring, and it's good for her to do that as well. So, okay, the next one she talks about, she's talking about different things that you can do as like just little family things, but that have to do with writing. I think these would be great too to implement into homeschool time. So there's Christmas letters, Christmas poems, prose, poetry, little birthday messages, short plays for a family evening of entertainment, little musical sketches or talents, biographical sketches, family history, serious records. There's literally so much. And so if you feel like there's nothing to write, this has some great ideas that you might be able to implement in your own home, in your own family. Yeah, because there's so many. And it's one of those things that once you start thinking about them, they just start flooding out. And so she talks about the diary. I call it a journal, but same thing as writing down some events from the day, and news, historic facts, thoughts, feelings, ideas, daily struggles. I would love to know some of the daily struggles that my mother had or my grandparents had, because I feel like those are the things we don't know. We don't know about those things that were hard in their lives. An account of their growing understanding of life, purpose, commitment, just their daily record, their routine, the cultural things, spiritual things, intellectually, things that are changing in our world, just keeping a record of things, kind of like news. Yeah, there's just so many things. And she says, I love this so much. In fact, we actually kind of do this in our homeschool. Here she says, it is far more important to write than it is to study about writing. And I think we as moms, as teachers, as homeschool parents, whatever, make that mistake so many times. And I feel like I need to just like laminate that and hang it up. It's more important to write, to actually do that, than to study about how to do it. And so it's just a good little tip, little reminders. Okay. For anyone who becomes confused in conversation, I'm reminded of Moses, sometimes myself. You know, it's easy. We talked about being able to organize your ideas and then give it out to where you wanted it to go. This one I thought was really handy, and it talks about, for anyone whose mind wanders off to a dozen different thoughts in a dozen different directions when praying, it is often important to organize and present one's requests to God in writing. I thought this was like, you know, because whose mind doesn't do that? Who doesn't kind of wander off when they're praying? But it's true. And writing down those prayers, again, an awesome record for the next generation, for them to see and have, and even how those prayers were answered, or were they answered. It's just good. Another thing, writing one's praises, love for God, their thanksgiving, making up hymns. This is important too. If no other person ever saw the prose or poetry you write to God in real communication, which is a real prayer, it still wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter if nobody sees it. It's okay because it's for God and God sees it. So I do think this is kind of a whole new direction that maybe we haven't considered, is just writing to God. Just write to God. And later, it maybe somebody will see it and it'll be beneficial to them. Maybe they won't. Either way, it's beneficial to you when you do it. After all, here's like our big bright wisdom. After all, God has communicated with us in writing, his word, the Bible. He has spoken. He is speaking. He will speak. He will hear. He will answer. This is not artificial. It is real. It is not a psychological gimmick nor a therapeutic exercise, but a relaxed and protected, comforting communication with one's Father, Shepherd, friend, counselor, and mighty God. This small chapter that I kind of scoffed at in the last video is so full of wisdom and motivation and inspiration for myself, and I hope for you as well, because that is the whole point of this book. And so like I said, if you don't have a copy, do encourage you to pick one up of your own. Like I said in many videos, I don't get any proceeds or profit if you buy it or if you don't buy it. I really just think that it would help you, and that's why I'm encouraging that. So that is it. That ends this chapter 9 on writing prose and poetry. Next week, we are going to put this book on pause for the month of June, and we are going to be focusing on biblical marriage in a world that is attacking a man and a woman being married. I am going to spend the whole month of June discussing biblical marriage and things that we do in our family, things that we don't do, things that we like or don't like or whatever, and things that we have learned. We've been married 15 years, so I'm going to put this on hold. I am so sorry to break it into this, into the middle of this, but I didn't realize June would come so fast, so here we are. Anyways, after that, we will have 4 chapters left to cover probably all of July. So that is when we will pick this back up. We're going to put it on hold, and I will catch you guys next time.